Hello and welcome back to Bunniichii Corner. This week I wanted to tell you a story that I learned about this morning. This morning as I was outside digging a hole right outside the garden near the babbling brook, I heard an interesting sound. I heard this sound as I was taking a break from digging that deep hole, and I looked around to see where it was coming from. It sounded like a soft murmur, a murmur of a song or chanting. That is something that I cannot quite specify, but the tone was that of a song. I just had to find out where it was coming from. As I searched about the yard and about the babbling brook, I witnessed a fish. Not just any fish, for normally outside the burrow we do have some fish that look similar to minnows, and even some salmon every once in a while, though I don't know how they came to be there. This fish was something new. It was a long, oblong fish with silver scales and flecks of gold along. When it spotted me, I heard its soft lilting voice call me over. "Come here, let me tell you a story." So, for some reason, I decided to go closer to this fish and see, well, why was it talking to me? As I slowly walked over, I heard it continue its chant, "Come, come, come closer." Finally, I went up to Mr. Fish and I said, "Mr. Fish, what is it that you wish to tell me?" Mr. Fish replied with, "I have some interesting stories from my homeland overseas. If you'd like, I'll tell them to thee." Seeing as I have never heard of a talking fish before, I very readily agreed. I said, "Mr. Fish, please tell me these stories." Mr. Fish replied, "I do not have stories 3, but I do have stories to tell thee. I will give you one for free, but the next one, wait and see." So now here is the first story from Mr. Fish of the land of Orkney. The Sulky Wife. There once was a young man in the East Mainland parish of Dearness who was going home late one night. What he was doing out so late I have no idea, but he was walking along the shore on his way home. He thought that he could hear something drifting towards him on the breeze. It was the sound of music. On along the shore he walked, and he could hear the music getting louder and louder as he went. He slowed his pace down, treading carefully and quietly along until he found a piece of rock jutting out, and he hid behind it. Peeping around the rock, he saw that the music was coming from 2 men sitting on a flat rock and playing fiddles. There, on a sandy piece of the shore in front of them, was a crowd of people all dancing in a great circle. The moonlight shone on their white skin as they danced round and round, laughing with delight. All around them, the man could see the shape of animals lying asleep. He very carefully crawled along the beach towards the sleeping animals to see what they were. When he got there, he saw that they were not animals at all, but sealskins, empty sealskins. He knew then that these were Selkie folk and that this must be their night to dance. One of the skins was lovelier than the rest. It was silvery colored and silky smooth to the touch. He rolled it up and put it under his jacket and then returned to his hiding place to watch them dance. But as soon as the first light of dawn peeped over the horizon, the music stopped and they all ran to their skins, pulled them on, and slipped back into the sea. All, that is, except for one young girl who frantically searched among the rocks and seaweed for her missing skin. In her panic, she ran right around the corner of the rock where the man was hiding, right into his arms. He clutched her tight and looked into her large, beautiful eyes, and he thought that she was the most beautiful girl that he had ever seen and that he would never be happy until he had her for his wife. She, on the other hand, had other ideas. She punched him, kicked him, scratched him, screeching out of her in the silky tongue, for the Selkies have their own way of speaking. But he was too big and strong for her, and he carried her off to his home where he lived with his mother. Now, what he said when he came home with a naked girl under one arm and a sealskin under the other, I don't know. But his mother was a kind-hearted soul, and she took great care of the Selkie girl. The poor girl just sat by the fire, sobbing her heart out for days on end. But eventually, she calmed down and the old woman got her used to wearing clothes and taught her how to speak. She also taught her how to cook and bake and brew ale, spin wool and knit and do all the things that it was thought necessary for a woman to do in those days. After a while, it became obvious that the Selkie girl liked the young man too, for she always followed him around and was always happy in his company. It was no surprise when they were married and set up home together. In fact, it was said that there was not a more beautiful bride seen in Deerness than the Selkie girl. After a while, they had the bairns, and they were also very beautiful and clever children. The man took the seal skin and locked it up safe and sound in the big kist in the ben end of the house. One day, the Selkie wife took her husband to one side and said to him, "You know that I am a creature of the sea, and I know that you have my skin, and I know where you keep it. It's in the big kist in the ben end of the house. I also know that you keep the key on you at all times. But I want you to make me a promise. I'm happy here with you and the bairns, but if I ever get my hands on that skin, then I can't promise that I can resist the urge to go back to the sea. So, if you love me, if you really love me, then never let me get hold of that skin. Do you promise?" "Yes, I promise," he said. Now, it was one August, and the Lammas Fair was in full swing in Kirkwall. This was a great market where you could buy everything from a hen's leg to a horse. People came from all over Orkney and from Shetland and the north of Scotland as well. They arrived in their numbers to buy and sell, and there were games and fun things to do for the bairns too. It was a great occasion, and the man thought that it would be a great treat to take his bairns to see it. He got a horse and cart ready to go, and once the bairns were washed and dressed in their Sunday best, he put on his best clothes as well, and they set off for the town. The Selkie woman didn't go with them though. She decided to stay and give the house a thorough clean while they were away. That evening, as the man turned the cart for home, the bairns were curled up asleep in the back. But when he got near the house, he could see that something was wrong. There was no light in the window, no smoke coming out of the chimney, and the front door was standing wide open. A sudden fear gripped him, and he ran inside, shouting for his wife, but there was no reply. Then a terrible thought came to him, and he ran to the ben end, and there was the kist standing with the lid wide open, and the skin was gone. Finally, he realized what had happened. In his haste to get away, he had changed his clothes in a hurry, and he had forgotten to take the key with him. When the Selkie wife was tidying up, she hadn't been looking for the key, but when she picked up his clothes, she could feel the key in the pocket of his jacket. She took it out and looked at it. She knew what that key opened and what was inside waiting for her. She ran through to the ben end and put the key in the lock and turned it with a click. Slowly, she opened the lid, and there was her skin. When she saw it, the urge just to touch it one more time was too strong. Once she had touched it, the urge just to pick it up was too strong. When she picked it up, the urge just to hold it against herself was too strong, and once she smelt the salt on the skin, the urge to run to the shore was too strong to resist. When she reached the sea, she gave a cry of anger and desperation, pulled on the skin, and dived into the sea as a seal once more. The man searched along the shore for his Selkie wife, but he never saw her again for as long as he lived. But it was said that when the bairns used to go down to the shore to play, a Selkie would swim backwards and forwards in front of them, sobbing like its heart was breaking. This was the first story that Mr. Fish told to me. I told him, Mr. Fish, what a story. Could you please tell me more?" He looked to me and said, "Why, yes. I have many more stories to tell. The first one was free, but now there's something for me. In exchange for one more story of my friends overseas, I require a secret from thee. as I thought and pondered whatever a secret I could have to tell him, the fish turned to me and he said, "A secret that you must tell to me must be as dark as the depths of the sea, that which you cannot see. Something only as dark as that is one that you can pay for me." I knew then what I could tell him. A secret that I cannot tell you, dear listener by the fire, but it's something that's hidden deep inside the earth and will continue to be so. I told him, "Mr. Fish, come closer," and I bent over the water right next to him and whispered my darkest secret. I waited. Mr. Fish swam around, and I could tell by the bubbles slowly popping up from below that he was contemplating on if my secret was dark enough for him to tell me his next tale. Finally, after what seemed a lifetime, he came up from his pondering and said, "The secret is good enough that it's something that I can take with me and bring on my next adventure. As such, here is the story in exchange for your payment. This is the blinding of Tam Scott." Tam Scott was a sailor who ran a large boat from his native island of Sanday. That was until he went blind, of course. So let this story be a warning to you all, for I am about to tell you how Tam Scott lost his sight. It was a sunny day in August, and the Lammas Fair was about to begin in Kirkwall. This was a great event with all sorts of folk coming from all over Orkney to sell their goods and have fun. Dealers and merchants, hawkers and showmen came to the fair from as far off as Scotland and Shetland to join in the merriment. It was certainly a sight worth seeing and was eagerly looked forward to by one and all. Tam Scott and his pal Willie got the boat ready for the voyage from Sanday to Kirkwall. There were plenty of passengers wanting to make use of their vessel, and soon they were full and ready to go. Tam smiled a knowing smile to himself as the mothers fussed over their pretty young daughters. For he knew that they would have protected the girls by painting a cross on their breasts as a protection in case the Finn folk should try to carry them off as their bride. The sign of the cross was a powerful weapon against the Finn folk, as was a blessing. The boat sailed swiftly between Ide and Stronsay, past Chappensay, and soon the spire of St. Magnus Cathedral was looming large across the bay. Tam and Willie secured the boat, unloaded their passengers, and then walked up the narrow, winding street to the Kirk Green in front of the cathedral where the main part of the fair was held. Willie's thirst was bothering him, so he headed to the Anchor Close for a drink. Tam carried on chatting to old friends, catching up with the news, and sharing a cog of ale. After a while, a stranger walked over to Tam and said, "You have a boat for hire, I hear." "Yes, I have a boat for hire, and a fine boat she is, too. In fact, I need you to carry me and a cow to the Northern Isles," the stranger interrupted. "I'll make it worth your while for leaving the fair early. I shall meet you at the pier in half an hour." Tam went off to find Willie, but there was no sign of him. Eventually, he found him lying at the head of the Anchor Close, dead drunk. Tam gave him a kick and cursed his thirst, and then headed to the boat to wait for his passenger. Soon he saw the stranger coming down Bridge Street leading a cow. He was a tall man, very well built, and with hair and beard as black as a crow. When he got to the boat, Tam moved forward to help him get the cow into the boat, but the stranger picked the cow up like it was a sack of wool and set her in the boat. Tam stared in amazement, saying, "You weren't last in the queue when strength was being dished out." The stranger stared at Tam with a frown on his face, but said nothing. Tam sailed the boat across Kirkwall Bay and headed towards Thieves' Home, where criminals were hanged as a warning to the crews of visiting ships. "My name's Tam, by the way. I haven't seen you around before. What's your name?" "A close tongue keeps a safe head," replied the stranger, glaring at Tam coldly. "Well, where do you want to go?" "East of Chappensay," said the stranger. Tam sailed his boat through the string, a stretch of water with powerful currents that can test the best sailors if they are careless. Once the boat was off the east coast of Shapansay, Tam said, "Where to now then?" "East of Stronsay." Tam was a sociable man and he enjoyed a good chair, but whenever he tried to strike up a conversation, the stranger would fix him with a cold stare and say, "A close tongue keeps a safe head." When the boat was off Stronsay, Tam asked, "Do you want to land here?" "East of Sanday," came the reply. "East of Sanday?" said Tam, who was rather confused and getting a little bit annoyed with his passenger. "What do you mean, east of Sanday? There's nothing east of Sanday but the fjords of Norway, and this boat was not built to cross the open sea." "East of Sanday," growled the stranger. Tam remembered how easily the man had picked up the cow and decided not to argue with him. Instead, he turned the boat east past Oscary and set a course north towards the east coast of Sanday. As they sailed, a fog started to gather around the boat, which caused Tam some concern. "The fog is drifting in off the North Sea." "A close tongue keeps a safe head," replied the stranger. "A close tongue might keep a safe head, but a close fog would not be safe for either of us." At that, the stranger smiled a sulky smile. The first time that Tam had seen him show any sign of mirth. Suddenly, the fog lit up like the rays of the rising sun were shining through it, and it hung like spun gold on the surface of the sea. The boat sailed into the swirling, dancing mist, which blocked out any sight of the islands. After a short time, the fog lifted, and there before them Tam saw a beautiful island with fields of ripe corn swaying in the breeze. Men and women were walking around lovely houses, and strange blue cattle grazed on the slopes of the green fields. It was the most beautiful sight that Tam would ever see in his life. As the island came into view, the stranger leapt to his feet and rushed towards Tam, saying, "I have to blind you now for a time. Do as I say, and no harm will befall you." Tam remembered the cow being picked up and thought that it would be the safest thing if he went along with the man's demands. He knew now that his passenger must be a Finn man and that this was Hildaland, their magical floating island home invisible to mortal eyes. The Finn man used Tam's napkin to blindfold him, but it didn't quite cover his eyes and he could see a bit of what was going on. The boat grounded on a gravel beach and Tam heard voices all around him as they unloaded the cow. Then he heard the most beautiful singing as the mermaids began to try to enchant him with their voices until the Finn man shouted, "You needn't try to cast your spell on him, for he has a wife and bairns at home on Sanday." When the mermaids heard that, their song changed to a sad lament, which was so heartbreaking that the tears came to Tam's eyes. He heard the sound of a bag of money being thrown into the boat and felt the boat pushed off into the sea. The Finn man shouted to him, "Head for starboard and you will soon be home." Tam then realized that the Finn folk had pushed off the boat against the course of the sun, as they are an unholy race. By the time he removed the blindfold, he found himself wrapped up in the fog once more, but soon it cleared, and he found himself drifting off the south coast of Sanday in familiar waters. When Tam got the boat ashore, he undid the bag and poured the coins onto the bottom of the boat. He saw that he had been well paid for the journey, but every coin was a copper one. The Finn folk loved the white money, as they call silver, too much to part with it. A year passed, and the Lammas fair time rolled around once more. Tam was in Kirkwall during the third day of the fair, but many times afterwards he would regret having got out of bed that day. As he was taking a cog of ale, he saw the Finn man amongst the crowd, and he went over to greet him. "Hello, it's good to see you again. Would you like to join me for a drop of ale? So, what have you been up to since I last saw you?" "Did you ever see me?" asked the Finn man, taking a small box out of his pocket and holding up to Tam's face. "You will never have to say that you saw me again." With that, the Finn man blew some of the fine powder that was in the box right into Tam's eyes. Tam screamed as his eyes burned and the sight left them forever. After that time, Tam never saw another thing and lived the rest of his days in darkness. So, you see, there is many an evil heart hidden under a fair face, and you should never be too trusting of strangers, especially Fin men. Upon the end of his tale, I knew that there was more I needed from Mr. Fish. Call it being greedy or call it the thirst for knowledge, but I could not let him go. For you see, he now held my dark secret close to him. Who knew what other person he might find in a babbling brook and give away such dark tales? So I told him, Mr. Fish, please come with me. I have a bucket, I have water. Come with me to the burrow, and I'll be sure to give you more stories. You and I can sit by the fire, we can talk and see if there's more that we can learn about each other. But oh, that Mr. Fish. That Mr. Fish saw through my tale of lies. He said, no, I must away. There are many more to see, many more tales to tell. I would hate to forget yours so soon. And while I would love to say that Mr. Fish swam away quickly and out through the valley, that isn't something for me to say. Now, I know I typically give you these stories for longer, listener, but you see, I have dinner waiting for me on the stove, and I tend to like my dinner while it's still hot. Tonight's supper is my favorite, you see, for I just so happened to get a fresh fish. Until next time, then, stay safe.